Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, cats and dogs, I sit before you today absolutely shocked to learn that President Donald Trump stands accused of paying off women to keep them silent about his adulterous affairs. The sleaziness of this behavior is out of keeping with everything I know about this president, because after all, normally when I look up at a building and see the gigantic gold letters spelling Trump on top of it, I think, that's class. But let's put this in some perspective. In the last election, we had a choice between a candidate who paid off women to keep them silent about adulterous affairs and Donald Trump. And I thought to myself, do I want to elect a woman who has promised to gut the Second Amendment and seriously damage the First? Or do I want to elect a man who's being blackmailed by some seriously banging chicks and will leave my First and Second Amendment rights alone because he has no idea what they are? And I admit, faced with those options, I look back sadly on America's better days when John F. Kennedy boldly promised we would go to the moon and then bang two women simultaneously in the White House pool. That's right, simultaneously. He also got it on with Marilyn Monroe. America was just a greater nation then. Now, many Democrats and journalists, but I repeat myself, are accusing Republicans of hypocrisy. They say if Hillary Clinton had done what Trump did, we would be calling for her head. And hey, there's nothing I like better than a lecture on sexual ethics from a party that just nominated a guy in a skirt and pearls to run for governor of Vermont. But they have a point. I would be calling for Hillary's head, if only to stop her from laughing that horrible laugh that sounds like a pterodactyl in heat. So I say, bring on the Democrats, journalists, late-night comedians, and never-Trumpers to continually insult ordinary Americans for their beliefs, their ways of life, and their political choices, and then to try to impeach the president they elected on a campaign finance technicality. Do it, Democrats, because I think you'll all look absolutely marvelous in tar and feathers. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
It's Mailbag Day, so worry about you should worry about absolutely nothing, because within minutes, within mere moments, all your problems will be fixed, because my answers to your questions will be 100% correct and will change your life. For some of you, for the better. The rest, you're doomed. Now, some of you, of course, love your Helix Sleep mattress because it helps you to get a great night's sleep. Wimps. I love Helix Sleep stuff because I'm awake all night and it's so comfortable to lie there while I'm contemplating death. Helix Sleep has built a sleep quiz. It takes 2 minutes to complete, and they use the answers to match your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress. Also the pillow. I have the pillow, and the thing is absolutely great. It is so soft. I know this because I tried it once, and then my wife tried it, and I've never seen it again. She took it away. Just go to helixsleep.com/Klavan, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you to a mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. And for couples, Helix can even split the mattress down the middle, providing individual support needs and feel preferences for each side. There's a 10-year warranty too. Right now, Helix is offering up to $125 off all mattress orders. Get up to $125 off at helixsleep.com/Klavan. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for $125 off your mattress order. Helix, Helix, helixsleep.com/Klavan. But how do you spell Klavan? One wonders. No E's. There are no E's in Klavan. It's Klavan. I just make it look like there's E's in Klavan. All right. So I know you have all this news, obviously. Paul Manafort is found guilty on 8 of 18 counts. The other 10 counts was a mistrial. And Michael Cohen, the even bigger story, made a deal with the prosecutors that implicated Trump. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about Hegelian aesthetic theory. That's what I was thinking about. And I know where else but this show can you go from Michael Cohen to Hegelian aesthetic theory. And I may be the only person in America who has read Hegel in the original gibberish. So I know what it's about. But here, this is true. Hegel's aesthetic theory had a great theory about what tragedy is. He had this theory that infinite principles, universal principles, work themselves out in history. So these principles were on the spiritual level, but they work themselves out in history by two sides coming together and kind of destroying each other and becoming a third thing. And each time it did this, it rose, the history rose toward the spiritual absolute, but was always doing it in half measures because these two sides, both of these two sides were partly right and partly wrong. This is what Karl Marx stole, and he took the spiritual element out of it and turned it into a nonsense so it could be believed by people like Alexandria, Google Eyes Cortez. But anyway, Hegel said the tragedy occurred in moments of transition when a hero was forced to choose between one of two options, both of which were right and both of which were wrong. So no matter what he did, he was choosing the right, but he was also doing wrong. And the dialectic was resolved by the death of the hero. And that's how it moved on to the next stage. And that's how tragedy happened. And that is where we found ourselves in the 2016 election. See, it actually does make sense. It actually does make it. That is where we found ourselves. We found ourselves between two choices. On the one side, we had the party that promised to fundamentally transform the greatest nation on earth into something else. Like, thanks a lot. These people are socialists. People have told us that our most basic concepts of reality, what men and women are, what gender is, who we are, what freedom means, all of this they told us for 20, 30, 40 years, completely wrong. And now, finally, after 8 years of weakening the country, of weakening our standing in the world, of weakening our economy when it wanted to take off, they were going to get their next, politician in there, Hillary Clinton, to nail down those fundamental transformations by appointing the kind of Supreme Court justices who would rewrite our Constitution from the bench, to do all the things that they have been trying to do, these many years, and they thought they had it, and we had to choose between them and Donald Trump, who is not a very nice individual, and that we had to go take a choice between whether we were going to protect our country, protect our Constitution, protect the simple truth of reality, what reality is, and not feel that every time we said X instead of Y, we were a racist or a terrible person. When we said, oh, golly gee, those nice Muslim people keep blowing people up all around the world, we wouldn't be accused of racism. When we said, oh, there are problems in the black community that have to do with their culture that aren't the fault of the past, we wouldn't be called racism. When we said we wanted men to be men and women to be women, we wouldn't be told we were crazy. All of that stuff we were defending by voting for a guy, and we knew exactly who he was. And I think that we made, those of us who voted for him, I think that was the right choice, but it was a tragic choice. And by a tragic choice, I don't mean that people died when you made it. I mean that each side had a very tragic price. The price of getting Hillary elected, of course, was the country. The price of voting for Donald Trump is we are now defending a guy who does stuff that is not all that defensible. However, the one thing we have going for us, is the left keeps overreacting. What Donald Trump is accused of, and I'll get into the details in a minute, what Donald Trump is accused of is essentially a campaign finance violation. The money that changed hands when he was buying off, according to Michael Cohen, and let's face it, it sounds to me like he's telling the truth. According to Michael Cohen, the money he was using to pay off the women that Trump was sleeping with was less than the money Obama was fined for his over $2 million in illegal campaign contributions. So normally these things are dealt with a fine. We also have this kind of deep state vendetta going after Trump and everyone who's ever come near him. Paul Manafort would never have gotten caught up in this. He's been doing this stuff for years. The only reason he got caught up is because he came within Trump's circle, and this silly Russian investigation is going on. Michael Cohen, probably the same thing, although guys like Cohen do tend to wind up in jail. Anyway, let's take a listen to Robert Khuzami, who is the federal prosecutor in New York. He's the one who announced that Cohen, and this is the bigger case because Cohen essentially implicated Trump in these payoffs. Here's the part where he's talking about those charges that involve Trump.
What he did was he worked to pay money to silence two women who had information that he believed would be detrimental to the 2016 campaign and to the candidate and the campaign. In addition, Mr. Cohen sought reimbursement for that money by submitting invoices to the candidate's company, which were untrue and false. They indicated that the reimbursement was for services rendered for the year 2017, when in fact those invoices were a sham. He provided no legal services for the year 2017, and it was simply a means to obtain reimbursement for the unlawful campaign contribution. A couple of points I'd like to make. First, these are very serious charges and reflect a pattern of lies and dishonesty over an extended period of time.
So that's a big thing, because if it reflects a pattern of lies and dishonesty over an extended period of time, and he's your witness against Donald Trump, doesn't make that great a witness. But nonetheless, the whole point here is that what they're saying, what I've heard them saying on the news, which is just untrue, is that this is a campaign finance violation because he did it to keep the women quiet so he could get elected. But that's not the case. The thing is that contributions to candidates, even if they're in-kind contributions, not just money, are limited to, I think it's $2,700. So this was more than that money. Now, if it comes from Trump, his contributions to himself are not limited, but it's only a limitation if Cohen was the one making it, and it was disguised, and they didn't say what it was, and all this. So again, it's the kind of thing where you'd usually get a fine, you'd get a slap on the wrist. This is a vendetta. This is Robert Mueller, who's on a wild goose chase after this Russian stuff, I believe. And he's on this wild goose chase, but he does what prosecutors always do, is they prosecute the guys who fall within their ken, and he's going after them. Also, of course, this is a move in the chess game that Mueller is using to turn these guys. So he's twisting the screws on Michael Cohen. Trump tweeted out, I kind of love this, Trump tweeted out, if anyone is looking for a good lawyer, I would strongly suggest that you don't retain the services of Michael Cohen. It's too bad he couldn't send that tweet back into time to Donald Trump. It's like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't hire this guy, because this was like his bud for years. This was his fixer. But obviously, this is to turn the screw on Donald Trump. And Lanny Davis, who was Clinton's lawyer too, right? Yeah, it was Lanny Davis, Clinton's lawyer. He is now, even though that in the plea, when Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, he did not name Trump. Lanny Davis is bringing it against Trump and basically saying, we're coming after you, me and Cohen.
Let me make 100% clear, the evidence was provided definitively by Donald Trump's lawyers. They wrote the special counsel and said Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to make these illegal payments. That's not a dispute. It's not about credibility. It's his lawyers in a letter used the word directed. Rudy Giuliani said, don't believe what Trump said on Air Force One. It's not a crime to lie to the American people. And he said Donald Trump reimbursed Michael Cohen.
So to be clear, if Michael Cohen committed a federal crime at the direction of President Trump, does that mean President Trump committed a federal crime?
President Trump committed a criminal act that corrupted our democracy. That's what the campaign finance laws are about. The same way that the Russians, complicit with WikiLeaks and evidence that members of the campaign at least facilitated that conspiracy.
So that obviously is the narrative they want to sell, that this has some connection to Russia. It has no connection to Russia. And the big language, he committed a crime that corrupted our electoral process. He committed a campaign finance violation. If they can prove that, that's what it is. Let me tell you just one thing. Like, if these guys think that for 50 years, they can insult the middle of this country, the entire heartland of this country, and tell people their culture stinks, and tell people their religion stinks, and tell people their flag is worth disrespecting, and tell people America, and go out and send our president out to apologize for America and tell us America needs to be fundamentally transformed. And then, after 50 years of this treatment, people finally get angry enough that they're willing to break their own rules and elect Donald Trump. If they think they're going to pull a coup on this president with campaign finance violations, good luck. I hope they try it, because I think first, they'll be tarred and feathered. I really do. And I think secondly, people are going to turn out. The big thing that they have in these upcoming midterm elections, the big thing that they have is that Republicans may not be smart enough to turn out. The Democrats are supercharged. They're angry as they can possibly be, and they are going to show up. But are the Republicans going to show up? Because if they don't, the Republicans are saying things like, well, I don't like this candidate here in my district because he's not like Trump, but he's the guy who's going to stop the impeachment hearings. Whoever he is, whoever that Republican is, you got to vote for him because he's the guy who's going to stop this from turning into nonsense. The other thing with the GOP is Donald Trump is more popular among black people than just about anybody, and for good reason. He has improved the lives of Americans with dark skin more than any Democrat has ever done. Really, he really has. The economy is doing great for black Americans, and the only problem is the Democrats have built a machine for turning out black votes. They pay off preachers, they pay off politicians in bad neighborhoods to bring the people out and bust them out. If the Republicans leave that card on the table, if they leave those votes on the table, they will suffer in the midterms. But let's go on a little bit and talk about Manafort. Manafort is just a matter of timing. Part of the timing is forced on Mueller. It both happened on the same day. Mueller was convicted, and part of the timing is forced on Mueller by guidelines in the Justice Department not to do political prosecutions within 60 days of a major election. So that's kind of why these things came together. But it also meant that the Manafort thing could sound as if, oh, look, all of Trump's friends and pals are crooks. Which, by the way, there's a lot of truth to that, but it makes it look like something is going on. Trump came out and he's kind of mourning about Manafort. This was not. What happened was he got convicted on 8 of 18 counts, I believe it was, mostly on bank fraud and that sort of thing. But there were 10 counts that are still on the table. He can be retried for that. He's scheduled to face trial in Washington, D.C. on money laundering charges. So he is under the gun, too, and he may turn on Trump as well. So there may be more stuff down the line. But I have to tell you, is there a place where I would go for impeachment? Of course. The only time in my entire life I ever thought a president should be impeached, and this included Clinton, the only time I ever thought a president should be impeached was when they found out about the IRS silencing voters during an election year. I thought that was that was crossing the lines of constitutional governance in such a way as it made our electoral system nonsense. Did far more damage than the Russians ever did far more damage than anyone in my lifetime. That was the only time I thought a president should be impeached. So I'm not but is there something Trump could? Of course there is. Of course he could cross a line like that. He could cross the line of constitutional governance in such a way that I thought he would be impeached. But again, this is who Trump was. We knew he was this guy when we voted for him. We knew why we were voting for him. I did. I knew I was voting for him to stop the gutting of the Constitution by a corrupt politician. It's not like he was running against Abraham Lincoln. He was running against Ma Barker, And the thing is, all this parading about his morality, all this parading and huffing and puffing about his morality, think about this. If Trump stepped down, Mike Pence would become president. One of the most moral men in government, a man they can't put a piece of dust. What do you think the Democrats are going to say then? Are they going to say, oh, good. Now we have a man who doesn't, cheat on his wife. We're so happy now. Now we're fine. They've been demonizing Pence almost as badly as they have Trump. It's the Constitution they hate. It's the freedom they hate. It's your right to say stuff. So, this is the other thing. The other news here, which kind of got lost in all this political news, of course, was this young girl, this young student, 20-year-old student in Iowa, Molly Tibbetts, who was murdered. And she disappeared a while back, as beautiful as it's possible to be, as all-American looking as it's possible to be, found in a cornfield. And the guy who killed her, who was charged with killing her, is an illegal alien. Here's the DCI guy, the Department of Criminal Investigation guy, Rick Ron, is that his name? Let me make sure I've got his name right, because he did the good job. Rick Ron, announcing how they found the guy.
We have confirmed with Homeland Security investigations that he is an illegal alien, and we believe he has been in this area now for 4 to 7 years.
Rick, how did you come into contact with him? How did he get on your radar?
Well, during the investigation, we reached out to the public, as you well know. And during our neighborhood canvass, we came across an individual that had security cameras. We took those cameras. He was kind enough to give us the footage from it. And through that, we were able to identify a vehicle that we believe belonged to Mr. Rivera. It was a black Malibu. And from that, we were able to track his pattern and the routes in which he took. We're also able to find Molly running on this video, and we're able to determine that he was one of the last ones to have seen Molly running based on the video, again, that we were able to seize from the general public.
So an illegal immigrant kills this girl. And this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about comparing Trump's character flaws, which I fully acknowledge. He has character flaws, even things that make him corrupt, even things that I find absolutely untenable and unacceptable. Okay, now listen to Elizabeth Warren, right? One of the icons of the left. Listen to her react to this news about this girl being killed by an illegal alien while Congress sits on its hands. Both sides, for years and years, they have sat on their hands without fixing these laws, without fixing our security. They sit there, and Chuck Schumer, to his incredible shame, one of the most shameful moments in this administration, had nothing to do with Donald Trump. It was Chuck Schumer shaking a pen at the press and begging Trump to act like a king and pass the law when he is a master of the Senate who's supposed to be doing that, compromising, facing down his constituents and doing what needs to be done. Now listen to Elizabeth Warren reacting to the murder of this girl.
You know, I'm so sorry for the family here, and I know this is hard, not only for the family, but for the people in her community, the people throughout Iowa. But one of the things we have to remember is we need an immigration system that is effective, that focuses on where real problems are. Last month, I went down to the border, and I saw where children had been taken away from their mothers. I met with those mothers who had been lied to, who didn't know where their children were, who hadn't had a chance to talk to their children, and there was no plan for how they would be reunified with their children. I think we need immigration laws that focus on people who pose a real threat, and I don't think mamas and babies are the place that we should be spending our resources. Separating a mama from a baby does not make this country safer.
That is like a little computer flipping to Democrat talking points. Yes, yes, this girl is killed. Yes, yes. But what about the mamas and babies, which has been going on long before Trump, and which they're playing because it makes good TV and they think we're all locked in the same echo chamber they're locked in, but we're not. We're not. And that is just a callous, stupid, political thing to say. It is the words of a woman who is not thinking with her human compassion, but is simply thinking politically. She has that speech in her head, and she gets to it as quickly as she can. And if you think that's bad, go over to MSNBC and listen to this Fordham professor, Christina Greer, on the same subject.
The separation of powers is not working because the Republican Party has not stood up to this president, not once. So even if there's a guilty verdict from Manafort, even though Cohen has turned himself in, the fact that he was even sworn in as president after the Access Hollywood tape let me know for a fact that the Republican Party is actually not working on behalf of the American people. They are working on behalf of Donald Trump. And he's been able to bully them into their silence. And I don't think that today changes much, unfortunately. I'm sure we'll hear what he has to say about this at his rally. But Fox News is talking about, a girl in Iowa and not this, right? And tomorrow morning, we know he'll wake up and tweet and sort of, besmirch the reputation of Michael Cohen and all the people around him and really go back to Mueller. And this is obviously going to boil down to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
A girl in Iowa. What is he talking about? Some girl in Iowa. The White House AP reporters, the AP White House reporter, Zeke Miller, tweeted about the story of this guy getting arrested for the murder. This is likely coming to a Trump rally near you. In other words, it's just a talking point. But it's not a talking point. This is something that energizes the people. Let's listen to Trump talking about it. This is cut 5.
You heard about today with the illegal alien coming in, very sadly, from Mexico. And you saw what happened to that incredible, beautiful young woman. Should have never happened. Illegally in our country. We've had a huge impact, but the laws are so bad. The immigration laws are such a disgrace. We're getting them changed, but we have to get more Republicans. We have to get.
So, I mean, you choose. Trump has a bad character. Trump paid off, cheated on his wife. Trump paid off the women he cheated with. That's bad stuff. Doesn't become good because we get what we want politically. But there is another side, right? He's up against another side. We're choosing between a bunch of bad hats. We're choosing between a government system that has gone terribly awry, that needs reform, that needs to be addressed, that is filled with people like this. But ultimately, I'm not going to throw this guy under the bus and with the Constitution with him over a campaign finance violation, even if it does make my skin crawl. Finally, and most importantly, I think, I got to play this one last cut. It's kind of long, but it's worth listening to. All week long, we've been talking about more than all week long, we've been talking about a lot this Empire Strikes Back of the mainstream media trying to shut down the Democrat machine, the Democrat corporations, the corporate social media, trying to shut down our voices. We have fought so hard to break through with using, social media, using computers, using the internet to break through and get a little bit of a grip on the culture, to start speaking to college students, to start telling people that no, it is not the way the left tells you. There is another way to live. It's a better way to live. It is the way the founders wanted us to live. And they're trying to shut us down. Now, all they talk about is Trump being a danger to free speech. Remember, like 300 newspapers ran the same editorial about how Trump was a danger to free speech while they were shutting down Alex Jones, while they were taking Dennis Prager off Facebook, while they're shadow banning people on Twitter. They're talking about Donald Trump is the big danger. Here is Donald Trump on fake news and free speech. Listen to what he's saying.
We are protecting, again, religious liberty. And we're also standing up to social media censorship. That's the new thing. That's the new thing. I'd rather have fake news like CNN. I would rather have fake news, it's true, than have anybody, including liberals, socialists, anything, than have anybody stopped and censored. We got to live with it. We got to get used to it. We're going to live with fake news. There's too many sources. Every one of us is sort of like a newspaper. You have Twitter, you have whatever you have, Facebook. But everyone, you can't have censorship. You can't pick one person and say, well, we don't like what he's been saying, he's out. So we'll live with fake news. I mean, I hate to say it. But we have no choice because that's by far the better alternative. You can't have people saying censorship because you know what? It can turn around. It can be them next. It can be them next. We believe in the right of Americans to speak their minds.
So Facebook is taking down Dennis Prager. The New York Times on its front page is telling us that conservatives are weaponizing free speech. One of their Supreme Court justices, Elena Kagan, is saying this is weaponizing free speech. And there's the President of the United States defending free speech. I will take that every time. We know we made a tragic choice. We knew we had to vote for a guy we didn't entirely approve of. We knew we had to stand by him when he was being accused of things he probably did that make our skin crawl. I did it then. I would do it again today because he's defending the things that matter most, our Constitution, our country, our freedom. And they are actually against those things. So listen, young people especially don't like to hear that some choices are tragic. Young people especially think there's an ideal that we can reach. We're always trying to move toward that ideal, but sometimes we have to do it in a tragic manner. This is one of those times, and I will stand with this guy as long as he's making speeches like that. I will stand with him for any number of prostitutes. All right, we got the mailbag coming up. We got to say goodbye to Facebook and YouTube, but come on over to thedailywire.com, subscribe, then you can be in next week's mailbag, and you won't have to carry around your troubles. You can take your troubles out of your old kit bag, put them in the mailbag. We'll solve them all.